Toshi, for inviting me to this conference and to talk about HPC in Australia. My name is Brendan Dalton, as it says on the slide. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Australia's CSIRO. I won't be too technical in this presentation. We've got some things going on in Australia that relate to national governance and funding decisions for supercomputing. We'll have a little bit of discussion about the technology in Australia, but I'm going to focus on a little bit more on that governance question and how policymakers are grappling with that, putting in place research infrastructure in Australia. Just a little bit about a CSIRO, just for those people who don't know. So we're Australia's National Research and Innovation Agency. If you didn't know, we invented Wi-Fi. We're part funded by government, or mainly funded by government, but a third of our funding also comes from industry contracts and commercialisation. In terms of HPC, we partner in both the national peak research facilities. We work with other government partners, so the Bureau of Meteorology, Department of Defence and Geoscience Australia on HPC strategy. We also work with other HPC facilities around Australia, funding infrastructure for CSIRO research to take place. We're on the AARNet board, so AARNet, for those of you who don't know, is the research network provider that basically provides the pipes around Australia for research data activity. And we have some big initiatives that CSIRO is responsible for, so we have things called national facilities, and one of those is currently the Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, related to the Pawsey Centre in Western Australia. It's a $300 million investment in a new set of radio telescopes, a kind of precursor to the Square Kilometre Array, which will also be, we're hoping, in Western Australia. But I don't want to focus too much on CSIRO. So, the landscape in Australia. So, research computing is a partnership. There's a mixture of funding. We have multiple levels of government in Australia, so there's funding from state government, there's funding from the federal government, partnership with research agencies like the Bureau of Meteorology, CSIRO, Geoscience Australia, and also universities obviously investing in HPC. We have some industry involvement in research HPC, but that's limited, and that will be a question that we'll come back to at the end of the presentation. As many of you know, and we have the representatives of these great facilities here, we have two Tier 1 peak for Australia, National Research Supercomputing Centres, the National Computing Infrastructure, or NCI, in Canberra at the ANU, and the Pawsey Supercomputing Centre in Perth, Western Australia, basically on the CSIRO premises on our Kensington site, which we share with the Curtin University in Western Australia. In Australia, we have multiple Tier 2, or what we call Tier 2 capabilities or facilities. They're mainly institutional, so we'll talk in a little while about some that we have within CSIRO, or they're domain-based facilities. We also have some Commonwealth-funded national new research infrastructure. So there's I guess a research cloud, a data storage element of that, or RDS, and also data management best practice, the Australian National Data Service. And there's some discussions about those organisations coming together in the future. So, what is the national HPC focus? So there's been a lot of reviews in Australia. Government loves undertaking reviews, and this area has been, I guess, reviewed. I'd say reviewed to death, personally, but so a lot of reviews have been underway. In December 2015, we had an announcement from the Australian Government, the National Innovation and Science Agenda, otherwise known as NISA. Out of that came a significant investment in data science through the creation of Data 6.1 in CSIRO. But the question of research infrastructure was left hanging. So we have data scientists, we have an investment in data scientists, but we've still got the question about how we're going to fund what's research infrastructure going to look like in Australia. In 2016, the Australian Chief Scientist, Professor Alan Finkel, undertook, I guess, another review, and that review in a sense is still ongoing, about national priorities for investment in research infrastructure. Out of that review, some recommendations, a roadmap sort of came to light. So there were recommendations about Tier 1 high-performance computing, still a question about investment, but discussions about governance and potentially the governance of Tier 1 facilities being more integrated, with centres being more closely aligned. There's also activity now following on from the Chief Minister's recommendations to bring together the research cloud, the storage, the RDS activity, and the Australian National Data Service into an Australian Research Data Cloud. And the overall theme really for coming out of this is we've got to do a little bit better in Australia to drive global collaboration. And one of the things we want to look at is access and authentication, bringing in global partners. Obviously, there's a report from the Chief Scientist. The way it works in Australia is the government then responds, even though the Chief Scientist is within government. And I guess we're waiting to see some of that response. We have some funding certainty coming through a national program, the NCRIS program, which is the National Competitive Research. Neil, can you help me? Collaborative Research Infrastructure Scheme. It's very innovative as well. We've got good innovation. And so there's been some certainty of funding there, but we're looking for longer term certainty. And so I guess to wrap up the national focus, there's been a focus on data science and other things, but we're still working through what the focus on research infrastructure, and particularly HPC, is in Australia. So just to jump into the centres, so first an update, I know Alan's here, so I better be right about this, Alan Williams from NCI. So over the last 12 months, NCI, which is the peak facility at the ANU in Canberra, has increased its compute and storage capacity. The Rajan supercomputer is now a heterogeneous environment. I won't read out the fact that it's got 84,376, well I just did, because 330 terabytes of main memory. I think what is happening at NCI is there's a reinvestment to ensure that NCI has the capability to support the kind of science that we're looking to do. The kind of science that we're looking to do there is to basically from a CSIRO perspective, although this is not all about CSIRO, we're extremely interested in the climate modelling capability that comes through. NCI is also focused on becoming a regional hub or creating a regional hub for Copernicus satellite data, and NCI is doing some work around genomic health to continue work on a data federation for researchers around national genomics. In 2016-17, NCI basically implemented some accelerated technologies to give a different mix of capabilities within the facility. In the future, as you can see, we're hoping to move to Luster 2.10. We're hoping to increase storage capacity, and obviously the question that I'm working very hard with Alan and others is to make sure that we can implement a major upgrade of the supercomputing facility. And obviously running a HPC summer school in 2018. So on to Caursy. Again, big numbers of cores, 35,712 on a Cray XC40. So for those of you who don't know, so NCI is in Western Australia in Perth, where the weather is not unlike this for most of the year. 100 petabytes of storage capacity, 3,000 core cloud. Also going into new system upgrades, so the Athena testbed and Zeus expansion. Once again, necessary work to make sure the centre has a mix of technologies to support a mix of research activities, and is also staying up there in terms of its capability. Pawsey, like NCI for me, is also working with central funding agencies to get that certainty of funding for the future. And yeah, just a case study from Pawsey, as we saw with NCI working on climate and genomics. So a case study of the kind of work that's being done in Pawsey, where we have Professor Laura Boykin, who is undertaking research to basically ensure sustainable agriculture, particularly in African countries. This is, I thought, a very interesting statistic that 800 million people depend on the cassava crop, which can be decimated by whitefly. And really, these case studies are great for me because I can take them back to government and show, the benefit from a social perspective, industrial perspective, and other perspectives about investments in research infrastructure. Moving right along, so just to quickly have a discussion about Tier 2 facilities in Australia. So we have obviously too many to mention, but some that you might have heard about previously. So University of Melbourne, I'm not sure whether people from these facilities are here, but we'll catch up later if you'd like to. Hopefully I'm going to represent them accurately. University of Melbourne and Spartan launched about a year ago. Combines cloud and HPC architectures. Obviously something I'm more familiar with is CSRO, so we're looking to, we're currently replacing our Bragg GPU cluster. We're going to rename it Bracewell. It'll be 114 nodes, each with 4 P100 GPUs. If we believe that if we haven't been able to deliver this a bit more quickly, we would have been quite high on the top 500 rating. It came through the other day, but unfortunately we couldn't meet the timelines. QCIF, so Queensland Cyber Infrastructure Foundation, they're starting planning for a virtualised supercomputer, massive at Monash University. They're bringing computing to newly minted data science communities, and we can talk about these things later in breakout sessions and whatever if you'd like to. VLSCI, so that's the University of Melbourne. It's no longer, I guess, badging itself as a big computing facility. It's basically transformed itself into a bioinformatics hub. So just quickly, and hopefully I am reasonably within time, the challenges that we have. So Australia is a relatively small country, even though a wealthy country. Personally, I believe we need HPC in research to help supercharge our innovation system. We don't have a native chipset industry, so what's our competitive advantage? We have really smart people. There are really smart people in this room, really smart people from across Southeast Asia, Asia in general. But one of the things I think we can do in Australia is ramp up that people capability. Ramp up that people capability by sharing with our partners in Asia as well. As the slide says, we need to maintain this ability to adapt HPC, to get out there and work with science. So we still find that there's a lot of science that could use HPC that isn't using HPC, even within CSRO. And there's been an investment in people in Data 6.1, but my question is, what about the HPC infrastructure that supports it? So we have now about 500 data scientists who've just joined CSRO in the last 12 to 18 months. They're absolutely hammering CSRO's HPC facilities. If we could broaden that out to the greater innovation ecosystem, I think we could do some fantastic things. Challenge, I guess, number 2 from people is industry. So, you know, to be quite frank, and I tend to try and be quite frank in these kind of presentations, Australian industry doesn't necessarily look at Australia as the place to get this kind of support. Say, you know, you need some supercomputing. People in big industry in Australia would tend to immediately look overseas, outside Australia. So, where again is competitive advantage? So, I used to work in industry policy. My focus would be on small to medium enterprises in Australia, and I know all of us have that. I think a lot of us have a similar thinking. So how can we bring small enterprises into HPC? There's a bit of an opportunity cost for a lot of them that don't necessarily understand how to work with HPC. It feeds back onto the people issue. Do we have the people that do that translation for small medium enterprise businesses? Then we also have this challenge around national government. So how do we turn the Chief Scientist's roadmap recommendations into workable governance, non-partisan advice for policymakers around technology options, around multiple technology options to support Australian science? And then finally, the challenge of going global. I said who represents Australia, and that is a question, but the other question is, and hopefully this will come up in the panel session, you know, what is the compelling case for working internationally on HPC? And just lastly, just an invitation. So on Thursday afternoon, NCI is running a workshop here, and please participate if you're interested in that workshop. Also, Pawsey is running a HPC Advisory Council meeting the first week of August. NCI is running an Australian Luster Group, so for those Australians in the audience, or others if you're interested, in Canberra on the 11th of September. And we've also got the DMF user group. We'll get you more information, but that's the URL that you can follow to have a look at that. So that's really my presentation.
Okay,
Thank you
very much.